Welcome to the Daily Apple. I'm your host, Kevin White. Emma Ryan and I will dive into all topics related to the science of longevity, along with some other subjects we just find of interest, with the hopes to provide useful information for everyone. This stems from my personal interest to optimize the human condition, to not just live longer, but to live better. Hello, everybody, and I'm here with the good Dr. Christin Glorioso, and we're going to talk about Neuro Age and all the things and your history, and I've just been really excited about kind of adding this on and having this conversation because I'm kind of excited about what you are doing. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So how we kind of came in contact was through OptiSpan, working with those guys a little bit, and they're kind of working with you, and I came across what you were doing and we had a conversation and kind of onboarded your stuff with our clients. And I want to talk a little bit about where you're from and your history and kind of why you got involved in this and why this is really important, because people are very afraid of diminishing cognition, neurodegenerative disease, because it's rare that you don't know anybody affected by this. And so it can be kind of scary when you see it happening and you consider it happening to yourself. So there's a lot of fear with that. And I think what you guys are doing is pretty exciting. So anyway, but yeah, tell me about yourself, how you got in this space and kind of your history.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I totally agree. So that fear around diminishing capacity is really why I started the company. So I'm a physician and neuroscientist by training, and I have a family history of Alzheimer's. So when I was a kid, my grandmother suffered with Alzheimer's. My grandfather took care of her in the home, had a really big impact on me, led me to dedicate my life to coming up with better solutions for Alzheimer's disease. And I found out recently, actually through Neuro Age, that I have a genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's. So I have a very common risk gene called the ApoE4 gene. I have one copy of that. Puts me about 3 times higher risk than the average person for developing Alzheimer's in my 70s and 80s. So Neuro Age is, created out of a personal need to try and prevent Alzheimer's. And what we know is that brain aging is a huge risk factor for whether or not you end up with dementia. And about 40% of your brain aging rate is due to lifestyle. So there's this huge actionable piece of it that people can work on if they know how they're doing with their brain aging. So it's really a hopeful message that, a lot of people are understanding their genetic risk these days, and that's not immutable. People have a big actionable component that they can do something about. And so the Neuro Age has a test for brain aging that can tell you how old your brain is and your future risk of Alzheimer's and other neuro disorders more than 30 years ahead of time. It's comprehensive testing that involves brain MRI, cognitive testing, plus blood biomarkers. And we separately give people a genetic resilience score to understand their genetic risk. And then people can track that over time. We offer personalized recommendations for people to slow down or reverse their brain aging.
So that's a good point to drive that home. Of 40% of what you do with lifestyle make a dramatic difference in whether you develop cognitive impairment or not. Is that what you're saying? So, having an ApoE4, when did you find that out?
Just a couple of years ago. So actually, when, I have this really strong family history, it's actually on both sides of my family. And so I was suspicious that I had genetic risk factors, but it wasn't until I started Neuro Age and also through my own research realized that how actionable it is to do something about it, that I finally got tested, because I was nervous myself to know whether I had any genetic risk factors. So about a couple years ago, as part of the initial start of the Neuro Age testing process, I got my genome sequenced and found out I had an ApoE4 allele. And it took the wind out of me for a second, but then went through the Neuro Age testing, and it was actually really empowering to know that I'm doing all right with my brain aging. It's certainly not perfect, but I'm younger than my chronological age. And so now I have a way to track it and take back control over that.
So what are some ways that, and we should get into what Neuro Age looks like, because I think of it in 3 different aspects, but what are some, whenever you learned your own risk factors and everything, how did that change the way you thought from the day to day? What were some big things you thought about, okay, I really need to pay attention to this? How did that change the way you lived, how you looked at your lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I already knew there were some things that we all should probably be doing. So the big six things for slowing down or reversing your brain aging are sleep, uh, 7 to 9 hours, exercise, at least half an hour a day, community. So having a big friend network is great, great for your brain aging. Diet, so Mediterranean diet, and lowering stress and staying mentally active. So those are the big things. And for me, I already knew I should be doing this stuff, but now I need to really start paying closer attention and tracking and, on a weekly basis, noting down exactly how many of those boxes I'm checking. And there's also some personalized aspects to it. So we see things on brain MRI, such as like white matter hyperintensities, and also in people's other genetic risk factors people have that kind of guide a more personalized approach to it as well. Yeah.
So part of the Neuro Age thing, the three different aspects, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think of it in three parts. There's the imaging part, which is the MRI, which isn't just an MRI, it's the way the data is interpreted and the findings. And I want to get into that and kind of what you see on that and really focus on. And the second thing is the blood test, where we really get into the specific genetic findings. And you can comment on that a little bit. And then, of course, the cognitive assessment test. And then outside of all that, you make specific recommendations based on those things. But I mean, you start with the MRI, right? I mean, that's the coolest part that I've seen, that, the evaluation of that and the pictures, and it really dials into the amygdala and all the different areas that can be affected. So yeah, can you comment on what that looks like and what you really look for on that?
Yeah, so a really great predictor of how you're doing with your brain aging and also your risk for specific diseases is brain volume. So, brains actually shrink with age. It's subtle, but it starts even as early as in your 20s. And the reason people's brains are shrinking is that they lose neurons in specific areas and also lose connections between neurons. And the rate at which that happens and which specific area that it happens in tells you how much you're at risk for certain disorders. So, if you see accelerated shrinking of your hippocampus, that would put you at risk for Alzheimer's. If you saw accelerated shrinking in the frontotemporal regions, that would put you at higher risk for frontotemporal dementia, for instance. And we also see other things on MRI, so we can um, a big part of whether or not you end up with dementia is how you're doing with your cardiovascular health in your brain, so the blood vessels in your brain. So we can see things like white matter hyperintensities, which are these little cardiovascular changes that occur in the brain. They are very common with aging. Most people have them, but they're not benign. So they do put you at higher risk for stroke or vascular dementia, and they're at least partially reversible with better cardiovascular control. So you can track them over time, see that you're having them reversed or slow down the progression of them. And, the way to do that is through better cardiovascular control with blood pressure and cholesterol and lipids and all the same ways you take care of your heart.
So you can go back, reevaluate somebody with the, say, some of these testing modalities and imaging modalities, and you'll see reversal or improvements of, just because you have shrinkage at different areas, or you can improve that. And I think that's really important. I just have not to get on a tangent, but I have, one of our clients was starting to go through the process of checking this out, and she was dragging her heels on this for the longest time, as as we were contacting about it. And finally kind of got through to her, we had a conversation, and she was like, "I'm sorry, I'm just scared. I'm just scared." And it was really emotional, but
Yeah.
we had the conversation that just because you can be scared, but knowing what hand of the cards you're dealt, you can actually take action on that and make a difference. So that's just, I can't say that enough. So I think that's just super important. So the fact that you can go back and re-image these and actually see improvements is pretty phenomenal. Have you seen some of that, or?
Yeah, we have, and there's a big published literature. So a friend of mine who's a neuroradiologist
Mhm.
did a study where he followed people with serial brain MRIs, and just 25 extra minutes of exercise a week, people were increasing their brain volume on MRI. So they're actually literally growing their brains back.
Really?
So Yeah, I mean, especially if it's early, before you have a disease diagnosis, there's really a lot you can do to increase brain volume. And I
Yeah.
think people are scared because for a long time people thought, there's nothing we can do, and we now know that that's really not true.
Hmm.
It's the same thing if you have prediabetes or diabetes. People have been able to, through lifestyle, to no longer be diabetic anymore, no longer be pre-diabetic. So it's
Hmm.
really the same kind of thing, and I'm excited to get that message out there
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still, yeah, a lot of people still feel like it's just, there's nothing I can do about it. It kind of sucks, and that's not the case. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of buzz around in our circles, like senolytics, right?
Mhm.
Rapamycin and stuff like that, helping with brain aging and all that. And there's some new literature on that. Do you have any thoughts on that, or what do you think there?
Yeah, I think there's some evidence. I still think we need some more studies to come out, but Matt Kaberlein has some good studies going with the dog aging project and also with rapamycin and exercise
Yeah.
trials, and I think it's all very promising for rapamycin. I think also there's some good evidence for GLP-1s. That's another one, GLP-1 RAs, that I would throw in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those have been early on they were exciting, and they've just become so much more exciting for other reasons that I didn't foresee. But so so take me through. I kind of shot us off in other areas. So we've got the MRI. They get the MRI done with Neuro Age, and then secondly, they get a specific blood test focusing on specific genes. And can you kind of comment on what that looks like?
Yeah, so that is specific to our company. It's based on the last 20 years of my research out of MIT and before that at
Mhm.
CMU, where we were able to tell how old people's brains are based on the RNA levels of genes in their brain. And so
Mhm.
some of these are Alzheimer's related genes, and they either decrease or increase with age in the same way cholesterol increases with age, or another marker like that. That puts you at higher risk for Alzheimer's. And it's really the rate at which those genes change that determine whether or not you're going to get dementia. So we were able to measure them in postmortem brains. So people that had died and donated their brains to science were able to measure the RNA levels of these genes and see how at risk people were, and also track their brain aging that way. And then we went a step further and developed a blood test that could track from blood what was going on in people's brains, because it's not very practical to take a piece of someone's brain that's alive. So we needed some
Mm.
way to track it from blood. So using 52 levels of RNA of genes, we're able to actually track the levels in people's brains. So it's a test for brain aging, and it's another huge risk factor besides amyloid and some of the other markers that are currently on the market.
There's been some buzz around the whole clotho gene as well. Do you kind of delve into that as well, or what are your thoughts about that? That was just kind of interesting. I didn't know much about that until the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I looked at a few genetic SNPs in Clotho as a graduate student.
Okay.
And yeah, so I did a little bit of research around that a long time ago now. And I do think there's good evidence for Clotho. So I think there's some data in primates, so in monkeys. I know there's a company here in the Bay Area that is looking at Clotho injections. I think that is a future direction. I think that's going to hit the market. 4 years, we'll see some real results with Clotho. Yeah.
So we talked about if somebody wasn't going to get this test, and if there were three things you could take home to take care of brain aging and all that, that would be the lowest hanging fruit. You said sleep. You did say
Ex-
exercise, and that actually
exercise.
increases the clotho expression as well. Isn't that right? Am I recalling that right? I'm not the scientist here. You are. So
Yeah, I believe that's true. Exercise releases a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor (BDNF),
yeah.
which is like plant food for your brain. So every time you exercise, you get a release of this like growth food for your brain, and it helps you grow back those connections between neurons. So it's really good for you. And then if I had to pick one more, I think it would be community. So, having more friends, spending more time with loved ones, and quality time.
Hmm.
is really great for people's brain health.
How long have you guys been at it? I mean, Neuro Age is kind of new on the scene.
Yeah, so we
Okay.
incorporated in 2022. So we're coming up on our third birthday.
Okay.
And we launched the Neuro Age test to consumers just this past December,
Mm.
and to clinics this past fall. So we're
Mhm.
now in longevity clinics and concierge practices around the world, and also working directly with clients.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you're direct to client as well. Is that right?
we are. Yeah, we
Cool.
have people. Yeah,
So yeah, so they'd find that by going to, tell me about the website. It's NeuroAge.
tx.com.
Okay, NeuroAge TS. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can go there. Right now, you can play neuro games for free. So if you want a brain age, just in 30 minutes, you can go and do the cognitive testing portion. So test your reaction time, names and faces, which I think we all worry about whether we're remembering names and faces.
Yeah.
And a game we call word pairs, which are just 12 pairs of words. So there's these
Mhm.
little games, another one called Focus. And if you play them, they'll come back and give you an age just based on your cognitive testing.
Gosh, and see, a lot of people aren't going to want to know that, but they should.
Yeah, yeah. I, um, and you can track it over time. So it's really more important how you're doing versus yourself rather than versus the average person. So,
Mhm.
if you're staying stable in your baseline, year after year, then you're probably doing pretty well.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about, forgetting names or walking into another room and they forgot why they walked in there and that sort of thing, asking for a friend. But is that something that, is that something when people have that they should be concerned about, thinking, oh crap, I've got early dementia? What do you think about that? Do you?
I mean, you're saying what me. That's my lived experience. I have like my keys around my neck because I lose them all the time. So I'm like literally carry them around with me on my neck, and I forget. I take so many meetings that I end up forgetting names and faces all the time just because I'm multitasking. And a lot of
Mhm.
that is completely normal. But I was convinced that I already had early dementia,
Yeah.
before I took this testing. And so it's really nice because I think a lot of people will find out that they're doing better than they think, and that,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
it's scary, but a lot of that is a feature and not a bug, that we're not meant to keep that much information in our brains at once.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that, and all this is just begin. I mean, it's going to get better and better and better, and our, interventions will improve and all that stuff. So I would say if everybody should evaluate this and, go to the website and kind of get a baseline and kind of go down that path. You guys are working out of multiple states, right? I mean, you're kind of all over the US. You can do this neuroage testing pretty much anywhere, correct? In the United
That's
States?
true. And in 5 countries. So we're now set up in Canada, UK, US,
Yeah.
Australia, Poland, and Germany.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And the labs are easy to get done. They don't have to go anywhere. It's a kit that ships straight to their house. A phlebotomist will come draw it. It's only like 2 tubes or something. It's not that big a deal
yeah.
for all these
And
genetic markers. And
yeah,
and
go ahead.
go
Sorry.
Oh, and there, how many genetic markers are there? You said this already.
So we do whole genome sequencing. So we test your entire genome, but then we complete what's known as a polygenic risk score. So for Alzheimer's, we test more than 40 genes,
Hmm.
and we combine those genes together to give you a single, what we call resilience score. And the more resilient you are, the less you have to be concerned about the lifestyle piece. And the less resilient you are, the more worried you should be about having your lifestyle be better in order to mitigate that risk. But what
Hmm.
we've shown is that, at least for Alzheimer's and the ApoE4 alleles, you can mitigate your genetic risk entirely, even if you have two copies of the ApoE4 allele.
Really?
If you're 5 years younger and your brain aging, our research showed, you're less than the average risk, even if you have two ApoE4 alleles. So there's this huge piece that's actionable.
Yeah, we have a small practice, but I've got 2 people surprisingly who are ApoE4 fours.
Mhm.
So we really try to dial in all those things, and we're, looking forward to getting some more of this testing on them. So, but yeah, it's kind of neat that people can do this on their own. You're a direct to consumer, so they don't have to have a physician order this per se. They can just go directly to you guys and do all these things. So that's exciting.
They can. We
Yeah.
love partnering with clinics like yours because, having a physician and someone's own physician in the loop is obviously
Yeah.
better. But people can buy it directly from us, and, you know, we have people that will walk them through the process on our end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So where do you see Neuro Age going? Like, what's the next step for you guys?
Yeah, so we think of ourselves a lot like Tesla, actually. So Tesla is selling cars in order to gather the data they need for self driving. And
Mm-hmm.
Neuro Age is selling the Neuro Age test to help people right now, but also to gather the data that we need for better Alzheimer's therapeutics and diagnostics. So the Neuro Age test helps us create new drugs for people. So we're in early days with that, but we have started working on drugs that will reverse brain aging and treat neurodegenerative diseases. That's the
Mm-hmm.
long-term goal.
Oh, wow. Well, cool. Well, I'm excited about what you guys are doing, especially just because almost any human knows somebody who was profoundly affected by dementia. And dementia is one of those diseases that's almost harder on the family than it is on the actual patient. We look into focusing on longevity. I mean, what's the use if you don't have your cognitive abilities when you're elderly? I want to be active and doing fun things and things I want to do at that age, and not be you know ref, forgetting everything and not have my whereabouts without me. So anyway, but I think what you are doing is exciting. I didn't know that you guys were collecting information to help make better drugs and treatments. So it's really there's a lot to it. What other layers are going on at NeuroAge that are changing the world for the future? What else you have up your sleeve?
I think beyond that, what we want to eventually be able to do is to help people. So, in the case that lifestyle is not enough to prevent dementia or other neuro disorders for people, to be able to point them to clinical studies
Mhm.
or the right therapeutics. So it's really about personalized medicine. So some of the factors that we're tracking in the blood are also drug targets of new drugs that are coming on the market. So we
Mhm.
want to keep everyone in the loop for personalized therapies that could work for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some therapies that are kind of cutting edge now that are the future that you think about?
So for a long time, even the big pharma companies were shutting down divisions for neuro because it was such a difficult uh, therapies to make. So but in the last couple of years, there's been some modest wins. So there's anti-amyloid drugs that have been approved just in the last couple of years from Eli Lilly and also from Biogen and Eisai that remove this toxic protein that builds up in your brain called amyloid. Now, they don't work in everyone, and there's some serious side effects, but we're starting to see, even for some people that are caught very early on in the course of disease, so they're very early stage Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment, they work much better in those people. And Eli Lilly even just started a trial of people with familial forms of Alzheimer's that get Alzheimer's earlier, as early as in their 30s or 40s, for these rare forms of Alzheimer's, to prevent that from happening. So we're seeing these drugs as potential preventative drugs instead of treatment drugs. So, and for at least for Eli Lilly's drug, that is maybe a one-time treatment. So if you remove the amyloid, it stays gone for a while because it takes a long time to build up. So you may end up with a one-time treatment earlier on before you ever have a disease that could eventually prevent it from happening. So that's pretty exciting. And there are a bunch of companies working on versions of those drugs. So currently those drugs are IV and they have some serious side effects. So about 20% of people have brain bleeding or swelling. But there are versions of them that are pill form that don't have those side effects. And those are on the verge of being approved in the next couple of years. You're going to see it not be so hard for people to take because they don't need an IV and they don't have all these bad side effects. So I think we're going to end up with a statin like drug for Alzheimer's. So
Mhm.
statins lower cholesterol and they prevent heart attacks. So, in the same way, these drugs would remove amyloid and prevent neurodegeneration. So I think that's one class of drugs. And then there's other toxic proteins like tau. And then there's even, other classes of drugs that are working on other proteins related to Alzheimer's and other neurodisorders. So I think we're kind of right on the precipice of all of those being approved. The next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see real treatment options that people, can take and are not risky.
And you're talking about the idea of somebody saying, I'm really high risk, I'm showing early signs, or maybe not signs at all, but they have from testing from Neuro Age where it shows that, hey, you're at a risk factor and the penetrance of these genes is pretty high with you. So, and they would be somebody that could potentially take some of these early onset drugs.
Yeah. In the same way that you found out you have high cholesterol and you'd
Yeah.
maybe start with lifestyle, try to lower it, and if that didn't work, you'd take a statin.
Yeah.
Um, so we're gonna see the same thing for neuro, which would just be a game changer. I mean, it would change everything.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's exciting. I'm totally impressed about your work and what you're doing. And do you have anything else you want to say, or something that's important for anybody to
Um,
know about Neuro Age? Or
no, I would just say, feel free to reach out to us and have conversations about this. It's
Mhm.
pretty new thinking about brain aging in this way. So we're happy to chat with folks. We love that. And we're also very happy to be partnered with you, Kevin. And, you're on the forefront of medicine, really, with all the prevention and, the interventions and reaching out to people. So I'd also say, find yourself a great physician as
Yeah.
well.
How do
Yeah.
people reach you? I guess through the website or
Yeah.
LinkedIn. What's the best way to do that, or find your
Yeah.
work?
So they can find me on LinkedIn. So it's just Christin Glorioso. I have a unique name, so you can reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Twitter at Dr. Glorioso or X. Or you can email us at hello@neuroagetx.com. And I do personally check that email. So I will get back to you.
All right,
Um,
cool.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the neuroagetx.com. They can get on there and do their own cognitive testing and all that. Kristen, thanks so much for being with me, and I appreciate your help and with our practice and just talking to us today. I think what you're doing is really exciting, and it's kind of the future of where things are going. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really enjoyed it.
All right. All right. See you guys.